So I'm very pleased to welcome you to this event, The Story of Notion. So my name is Charlie. I'm Chief Information Security Officer and one of the directors at LeftBrain. Before we jump in, I just wanted to take a quick moment to talk about LeftBrain's story. So we started in 2009 and we helped creative businesses that used Apple technology with their IT. So during that time, what we found was that the types of businesses we looked after were the types of businesses that didn't really like IT. So we became sort of the anti-IT IT company. But times have changed, thankfully. Our aversion to grey suits and quirky ties is no longer relevant. And the rise of cloud-based remote working and the rise of AI has transformed the traditional workspace. So how can this new breed of agile, hybrid, technical teams work together, write together, and creatively play together? We found the answer is Notion. So this is where our stories combine. Recently, LeftBrain became the first EMEA channel partner for Notion. And consequently, this is the first EMEA channel partner Notion event. I feel like that deserves a round of applause. So today's event is going to happen in 3 parts. First, we're going to hear from Ciarán Doyle, an EMEA solution engineering lead for Notion. Ciarán is going to talk about how Notion helps creative professionals save time, deliver more projects to a higher standard. He will look at how AI is changing the game and how you can harness its power today. Then we're going to hear from Frances Odera Matthews, who is a certified Notion consultant, founder of the Notion Bar, and a seasoned design thinker. She works with clients creating cultures of intent by transforming tangled workflows into bespoke Notion ecosystems. Finally, myself and my colleague Lucas we'll be talking about how LeftBrain have used Notion, and then we'll be opening the floor for a short Q&A panel discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ciarán from Notion.
Thank you, Charlie. And thank you, Bethy and the LeftBrain team, for having us and hosting us here today. I'm incredibly excited to be in London as part of this partnership. I'm quite literally wearing it on my sleeve. For anyone who's maybe passed through Old Street in the last couple of weeks, you might have seen our Think It, Make It campaign. What I'm going to talk to you today about is a couple of things. But really what we're going to focus on is Notion and you. How people can use dedicated resources for knowledge and how you can put a plan in place for that. At its core, Notion is a knowledge company. It gives you the tools that you need in order to find, act upon, and create knowledge within your company. So in terms of an agenda, I'll run through a very quick welcome and introduction of myself in a second. Then I'll look at, knowledge is a very lofty concept. I'd expect to have kind of suede patches on my elbows talking about the concept of knowledge, but I want to have a little think about what does knowledge actually mean and look like for work. For those of you who maybe haven't used Notion before, I want to just do a little bit of an introduction in terms of what we think our product is. The beauty and the curse of Notion is that it can kind of be used for everything. So what we think our product is often not what people are using it for. And I'd be very interested in hearing people's use cases afterwards. Then, as Charlie mentioned, I'm going to look a little bit about how Notion can be used. So I'm going to jump into the product for a minute and look at Notion for creative professionals. If we have time, I know we've got 30 minutes, probably about 25 minutes now. I'll have a quick look at what's coming, but particularly want to focus on Notion AI, which is something that we are particularly proud of. I think Notion is at a unique point in terms of how it can harness AI technology, given that foundation of knowledge that lives within our platform. So a little bit about me. My name is Ciarán Doyle. As you probably can tell from my accent, I am not local. I flew in this morning from Dublin. Irish people have an unfortunate habit of talking a little bit too fast. So if I do that, if you could just wave your arms around, let me know, and I'll make sure that I'm talking a little bit slower and that everybody can follow. I lead our solution engineering team at Notion. What that means is I get to work with both our customers and our product team, ensuring that there is a clear and clean dialogue between both. The people who are building our product know what the people who are using our product need. And likewise, the people who are using our product every day get to know all the amazing things that it is capable of doing. Before I worked at Notion, I had 6 amazing years at Slack, where I did a very similar thing. And before that, I was in that suit and tie world. I was in the Oracle and IBM ecosystem for about 10 years before that. So let's tackle that lofty idea, right? What does knowledge at work look like? We're kind of midway through the week now. We're coming towards the end of it. But I'm sure if we can kind of all jog back to Monday morning, we all probably started our week the exact same way when it comes to work, right? We would have opened our laptops or scanned our phone with a cup of coffee, and we would have looked at our calendar. And that calendar would have contained 2 kind of key buckets. The first bucket is the meetings that we have. So where we are talking about work and deciding on work. And then we would have had blocks in our calendar where we action work, where we get that work done. If you think of your role within a company and your sphere of influence, it's that. It's the meetings that you have to decide about work and the tasks that you have to action work. But you don't work in isolation if you work in a company. You work as part of a wider ecosystem, right? So you have your team. And those meetings that you have and those tasks that you're working on will have an output. And those outputs will be things like documentation. Those tasks will be part of wider projects that your team is working on. And hopefully your team and that sphere of influence is connected to a wider sphere of influence, which is the company. And the company will have things like goals. So your projects are connected to goals or key objectives. And your company will have rules of engagement as well. If you are, creating new tools that are going to be shipped to customers, there'll be coding languages, there'll be requirements that you need to follow. If you want to book time off, there's probably a policy for that. So there's rules of engagement that you need for your company. That's the kind of third or wider sphere of influence that you have. When we think of knowledge is what weaves all of this together. And there's ingrained knowledge in companies. There is knowledge that sits in different pockets. And then there's knowledge that is ubiquitous across the company, stuff that everybody knows. Where I'd like to think, and I'd like to hopefully show you, Notion helps is it's in weaving all of this together. The knowledge no longer sits in those silos. That knowledge becomes ubiquitous and something that is shared across the entire company. What's most likely the case, though, is that you're often like this little person down here, in that there's lots and lots of, even the best, you go into McKinsey or Boston Consultancy Group, and they will have something like this. Even the companies that sell best practice will have a setup where OKRs are sitting up here and they're looked at once a year. They're probably looked at they're built in December, they're looked at in January. Maybe somebody will open the deck in July for a half-year check-in, but it's not connected to the product roadmap. The product roadmap is maybe not connected to the documentation or the tasks that sit underneath it. People are whiteboarding and taking notes in multiple different tools. The breakdown in communication and therefore the breakdown in knowledge is very, very real. I think we all know or have worked in environments where this is the case. So, in terms of an intro to Notion, just by show of hands, because it'll help me gauge how much to spend on this session, familiarity with Notion, people who use the platform regularly, hand up. Everybody? Fantastic. Who would like to give this part of the presentation then? We put that to the test. I will give a quick view, and why I think I think this is important is, and I think Francis's session is going to be really insightful for this as well, because how our community and how the many, many companies in our ecosystem use Notion is not often how we think Notion will be used. And that's the beauty of such a product. I go back to this because this is, for me, the crux of what Notion is. And we can talk about features and functions all we like and things that we've built and things that we are building. But for me, it is the intersection of what I do, what my team does, and what my company does, and how all of those things interact. It's where all of that work exists. In a more marketing parlance, Notion is what we call a connected workspace, where the meetings and the documentation that we have exists, where the projects that those meetings and those docs are related to live, and where the collective knowledge of an organization lives and evolves. And all of this is connected in a single place. In terms of what that means. So we like to think of ourselves as the wiki that redefines wiki. When you say the term wiki to somebody, they think of like a very laborious, clunky SharePoint from 20 years ago that somebody in internal comms owned, and it was impossible to get stuff up there, and the stuff that lived there seemed to live there for many, many years and wasn't always relevant. And then there was that person in the corner who actually knew everything, and you went and asked them. That's not how the world works anymore. And having a very complex yet indexed and searchable hub where you can find all your information, where things can be quickly verified, where dates and timestamps can ensure that things live for a certain amount of time, and when they're no longer relevant, they no longer get indexed in that search. And where they're also connected to every meeting, every note, every project, every task that happens within the company. That's incredibly powerful, and that's what we mean when we think of redefining what a wiki is. Most of you probably came to Notion through note-taking, I would assume. If you weren't introduced to it by a colleague, if you found it yourself, most people find it as a note app. And we kind of see, that was our, if you go back to when Ivan, who you all have a copy of the Forbes article with Ivan, when he and Simon first launched what is Notion today, notes was the key, was the kind of the core part of that. But notes in isolation are only so useful. They're great for us, but we may as well use a pen and paper. Notes that are collaborative at nature, note-taking and documentation that is rich and embedded with multiple integrations to our systems of record. And notes that are ubiquitous and shared are so important. And that's where we see the next generation of notes and docs. And then if you go back to that diagram that I had at the start, the power of my tasks directly connected to my team's projects, directly connected to my department or company-wide OKRs. For me as an employee, I have immediate buy-in because I know what I'm working on affects our company and how we are moving and the direction that we are going. And I can see the value of my work. And on the flip side, an executive in our company can stay up to date on exactly what's happening within the business, down to the minutiae of a task. So if they are responsible for delivering an objective or a key result, they can know the individual output of each and every task and where that is tracking. And using things like Notion AI, they're able to stay up to date with that all the time. And again, I talk about the flat nature of Notion and its ability to be used by absolutely everybody, which is both a blessing for our customers and a curse for the people who need to know about it all. But we see every single job role having an application for Notion, both professionally and personally, and see so many people finding new and interesting and ever-evolving use cases for Notion. So what I am going to do is jump into the product very quickly. And this is a demo space that I have created. And you can see here, I don't know how many of you have started using the new homepage within Notion. I see some nodding heads. I joined Notion June last year and we didn't have this. And I hadn't used Notion before at Slack. And not having this drove me crazy. And so I'm so happy to see this here. For those of you who don't use it, this is a new place for you to start your navigation, your journey, your day in Notion, where I can see all of the pages that I've recently visited or recently interacted, which is probably my most used feature here because it was something I was working on last night. I can't quite remember where it is. I can jump right in. I have my calendar here integrated, as well as all of my tasks. I'll scroll down here. All of my tasks, some databases that I've integrated. So like if I have an ongoing sprint, that I can jump directly in. What's trending and what's suggested for me by Notion based on my interaction and what other people are doing, as well as if I want to get a little bit better at using Notion, some quick links for learning and are in here too. Now, what I'm interested in is I want to show you from two views. That view that I spoke about on an OKR. So how I, as an end user, can interact, and how a executive might be able to find information quickly. So I'll start with that use case, an executive. You might notice in the bottom corner here, I have these little stars. And what these little stars do is they allow me to query Notion. So you might be used to searching within Notion through our little magnifying glass in the top left-hand corner. But this is a new way, what we call Q&A, for me to query Notion. So if I ask, what is the, and I'll do that awful thing of typing in front of people, so I'll definitely have a typo. What is the status of our loyalty campaign? Because this company is about to launch a new loyalty app. What this will do, instead of going and giving me the titles to 20 pages where this is being discussed, is it's actually going to go and read all of those pages at once. And it's going to create an answer for me that, as you can see, is actually referencing those pages. So if I want to go and find more information, I can. So if I am the executive who's responsible for an objective to enhance our employee or our customer experience, and this loyalty app is something that is going to help me get there, it's going to be very important to me. So I will want to check in on this, and if I want to, I can look through these 10 sources and find out more information, but it's giving me a quick summary here. I can see that the status is currently blocked. So I might want to ask, who is responsible? I knew I would have a typo. Who is responsible? And what that will do is it will actually pull those people who are directly responsible. So I can see that Nate, but also myself, Anya, are also responsible here as well. It's referencing the pages, and I can go and find more information. The power of this, if you just think for a second, if I am walking to a meeting where I know I have to talk about something, my neck is on the line for something, to be able to pull out my phone and have that type of conversation about any project, any task, any campaign that's currently going on within my business, is so, so powerful. It gives me the insight and the access to knowledge as an exec that I never had before. Now, what I might do is take a look into our marketing team space and our marketing campaigns. And let's look at this customer loyalty app campaign brief from the view of somebody who's working on this campaign. So what I have here is I have a campaign brief which I create for every single one of my marketing campaigns with an overview of what's going on, as well as encapsulating everything that's relevant to this campaign in one place. So every meeting that happens related to this campaign is templatized, and it lives directly within this database here. So I can find out, if I get added in at a certain point, I can find out what's going on. If I've been out sick for a couple of days, I can go through these meeting notes, or better yet, I can ask Notion AI to summarize them for me. And all of the documentation, things like our product roadmap, which would be super relevant if we're about to do a launch, the product's not ready, I need to know about that. Our budgets, our calendar, they're all here. The information and strategy, and this is the living part of the document, are all in here, and they're tied back to our company OKRs, as well as the audience that we're working with, and some of the key priorities. What I want to go down to, though, is our content team. So I hope you're all using buttons in some way within Notion, and hopefully you're using buttons within databases, which we recently launched. But here, if I want to work with our content team, I can have a request that lives directly within every single one of these campaign briefs. Now, what this button will do is it'll bring me directly to the content team's creative studio. And what they want to do is answer as few questions as possible. They want me to be able to find the information myself, because I'm sure 60-70% of the requests that team get are the same every single time. So what I have here is some of the key frequently asked questions. So I have an integration with Figma, which outlines our design overview and guidelines. Most of the people who are looking for resources from this content team might self-serve with that design overview and guideline. or they're looking for our font. So they might want some typography, and they can find that here. Or some of our rich brand assets that they might need. Again, they're found here. But if not, what we can do is we can continue on with that request, and I can submit a request to the creative team. That button is going to create a task in one of their databases. Now, I'll pop back out here. The other thing that is super important is our product dependencies. So like I mentioned before, you're on a marketing team, we're about to launch a big campaign, and that loyalty app gets delayed. There's a problem or a bug with the engineering team. Not being connected there can be super stressful because I, as a marketer, do not want to bother one of my colleagues in engineering when they are putting out a fire, but I need to know what's going on. So being connected here and having this database directly from their product launch is so powerful for me. I can see that things are blocked. I'm also connected into their Jira. So they might not be running all of their projects in Notion. They might be launching some of those bugs or resolving some of those bugs in Jira. By having that connection in this database means I don't even need to be in the same tool to stay aligned. Notion allows me to do that. Conscious of time, I'm going to talk very quickly about Notion AI. We all, or a lot of business leaders, agree that AI for knowledge management is going to be a game changer. But very few people are there yet. A lot of companies have strategies. They're beginning to think about it. And this is a brand new technology that's rapidly changing. If you look at, we have an AI chatter channel in our internal Slack, and every day there's a new company, has a new release, or has secured new funding. It is a disruptive piece of technology that is moving so fast. So for companies to begin to adapt and use this technology is tricky and challenging and scary, and it involves risk. Where Notion is uniquely placed is that we are connecting AI to your internal knowledge. So we have the ability to, as I say, make the knowledge that sits within your company ubiquitous. There are three kind of key areas that we see. We've been working in this space for Notion AI. If you read the article with Ivan that's in the Forbes magazine that you've been given, was created in November 2 years ago. So we're coming up on 18 months of Notion AI. And we've been working with customers for that time. And we're starting to see a lot of trends. And we see how those trends, we see those some key kind of components of those trends that will help you adopt AI. The three I'm going to share with you today are strategy, tooling, and education. So I'll go through each of those very quickly. The most successful companies dedicate resource to creating AI adoption and implementation plans. What that means is, like any new piece of technology, who is responsible, what are we implementing, and what is the end goal? If we do not have a problem that we are trying to solve, if we are throwing, ChatGPT and letting people go and have generative AI, what are they actually trying to solve? Because we cannot measure that success. We have to have a clear thought about what we are implementing, and we have to have a clear owner within our business. The number one reason that not just an AI strategy, but any new software project in a company will fail has nothing to do with the software and everything to do with the strategy and the implementation. The most successful companies are planning AI around the skills that exist within their business. So if they have areas where they need to increase efficiency, reduce spend, have skills that are lacking, and are purchasing and procuring AI tools to fill those gaps, to help them achieve those efficiencies, to create those to create those efficiencies within their budget as well. That is where we see customers having success, where they've done that evaluation internally of what they need. I just want to say thank you very much for your time today. Particular thank you to the team at LeftBrain for hosting us. And I might pass it over to Charlie or Francis. Brilliant.
Welcome, everybody. Today we are going to talk a little bit more about the Notion community and some trends that I see, or what I like to call the rise of big Notion energy. essentially. So a little bit about me. My name is Frances Odera Matthews. I'm a certified Notion consultant, and my brand is the Notion Bar, based here in London. Ultimately, I fell in love with Notion after working years in project management and operations, and it was the first tool that I had found that truly let me tell the story of my work, which we just went over, essentially. And 4 years ago, I thought, hey, maybe someone needs help with this. Turns out lots of people did. The rest is history, essentially. So first of all, you might be wondering, what is Big Notion Energy? Well, Big Notion Energy is when an organization or being is intentional with its processes and authentic with its approach. So you can imagine there is slowly a stereotype growing of the type of companies who do adopt Notion. They are generally quite innovative, they are generally quite stylish, and Notion is a tool which lets you do both, essentially, and it's completely flexible, and so a fun exercise which can be a nice icebreaker later, as I like to ask people, well, who do you think has Big Notion Energy? Some answers I've had in the past are like, oh, I think Steve Jobs would have used Notion, or even I've had Mary Curie once, as well as like Oprah. Like, so many people have Big Notion Energy, essentially. And it's actually an event series that I've started at the moment, which has been lots of fun. And so we briefly went over the fact that Notion can be used for a ton of things, but I generally like to categorize this into 3 buckets: track, store, and share. Really easy to remember. So Notion is great for anything you want to track. So this is anything, maybe project planning, task management, CRMs, campaigns on the personal side, your bucket list, your language learning. And then in the store bucket, Notion is great for storing things, so SOPs, employee directories. I think one of my favorite ever examples I've heard of Notion being used is actually from Emma on the Notion community team, who used Notion to store her grandfather's recipes, which I just thought was wonderful, and she can now share that with other people in her family. And yeah, it's a great tool, not just for business use, but also personal use. And lastly, the share bucket. So at the end of the day, Notion is a link. You can share that with people, and not a lot of people realize now that in Notion, you can actually put an expiration date on that link, which is quite handy. So websites are built in Notion. My personal website is built in Notion. Presentations like this one, pitches, or in your personal life, maybe you've got greeting cards. I've actually got a greeting card Notion template for Christmas and Valentine's Day, which you can fill out and share with your loved ones, which is quite interesting. Notion is just blocks. You can build whatever you want. And so to kind of broaden your mind a bit, here are some of the types of things that I like to build with Notion. My whole mission is basically making work beautiful. So all too often, you'll have a company invest tons into their amazing interior design, but you're staring at an ugly spreadsheet. Well, I don't think that has to be the case. And so I try and add a little form and function into the workflows. And Notion can really be customized with anything that you want. So this is something that I built for a D2C brand, which falls in line with their branding and general interior design, but you can just make incredibly cool documents, essentially. Like over here is a founder's workspace for a VC and a bootcamp tracker for a personal trainer. So you can really go wild. But all of these use cases are to say that we did go over this as well, that Notion can literally be used for almost anything. If you think it, you can make it, right? Which means that the Notion community is massive. I don't know what the official, marketed numbers now are with in terms of like user base, but I'd imagine it's somewhere in the millions, right? Notion team? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Great. And so the two main camps of Notion of the Notion community really are, you've got your users on one side who might just be using Notion in their day-to-day to support their lifestyle and workflow. And on the other side, you've got creators. So on the user side, you've got the personal camp, which we spoke about earlier. So students, Notion is very quickly becoming deeply ingrained in student lifestyle at the moment. Gardeners, actually, a very quick growing use case for Notion. And actually, there is quite an evolved underground culture of using Notion to plan Dungeons and Dragons, if anyone's into that. But yeah, people go hardcore with it. I've seen some setups where even I'm like, whoa, this is intense, but incredible to see. And on the business side, yes, you got your VCs, your agencies, startups, coaches, D2C brands. Pretty much anyone who needs to track, store anything, track, store, or share anything can use Notion. And then on the creator side, because Notion can be used for anything, this has led into the creation of a really bustling entrepreneurial community. So you've got your makers, template sellers and product sellers. Then you've got your experts such as myself and LeftBrain, who help you audit your workspace and your workflows and also train you in Notion. Then you've got the devs, who I thank God for them every day, deal with the API and automation side of things, as well as people who build plugins on top of Notion. Like Notion to Sheets is quite a popular one that's kind of blown up in the past few years. And then lastly, you've got your content creators, so people who make content on YouTube or TikTok. Actually, I think Notion last year passed 1 billion uses of the hashtag Notion in TikTok, which is crazy. And I probably haven't even listed them all yet, which is incredible to see. And Notion does support this in a more official capacity. So Notion does have official communities. So I'm personally a Notion ambassador and also a certified Notion consultant, but there are other communities such as Notion campus leaders, the Notion champions, so the people who their job is now to just figure out Notion for the company. There is a support group for them, which is awesome to see. And you've got groups all around the world for all kind of niches across all platforms. And truthfully, we are just getting started. Here is a quick generation of a cultural snapshot of perhaps the past few months of things that have happened and that I've seen in the Notion community. I've actually started a Notion newsletter called the Notion Zeitgeist, where I do actually curate these every week. So the QR code is there for you to scan if you want to follow along. But if we zoom in on some sections, up here you can see a LinkedIn post from Ben Lang, who is essentially the father of the Notion community, who noted that someone made $85,000 from literally selling templates to cheerleading teams, essentially, for $1,000 each. They found a niche, they found a template, they sold the template. So it's incredibly lucrative. You've got the Notion campus leaders up here with an event they'd made. I mentioned that Notion is growing very much in the gardening community. We've got a YouTuber over here with 200,000 followers showing how she uses Notion to plan and organize her summer garden. And that video created so many views. Another vlog over here, as well as someone created a really intricate guide to espresso machines, which I found fascinating. It was really detailed, and they shared it on LinkedIn, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. So people are making really cool things with Notion quite literally every day. Almost need an AI tool to just collate them all for me at this point, trying to learn how to web scrape, but we'll go down that, that trip another day. So today I'm going to walk you through 3 sort of main trends that I'm seeing within the Notion community, which are slightly more business focused, just to broaden your minds, essentially. So the first case study is using Notion for document design. So we mentioned that Notion is just blocks. But if you move those blocks in a certain way on the page, you can create really engaging layouts, and these documents could potentially replace some of the more static PDFs that you're using. Those docs are more collaborative, they're more transparent, they're more interactive and more dynamic. And so if we zoom in on here, this is a screenshot collage of my favorite type of doc to create, which I've coined the Notion zine. So if you think back in the day, you would get a nice magazine delivered to your house with this really cool print layout and just really exciting to look through. Then all of a sudden everything went online and it was just a single column scroll. Not that much fun. And so I thought, well, hey, I can just create those same layouts in Notion and create the same effect, but online, which is really interesting. And so I started out creating the first Notion zine template. So this would be your traditional contents page, but then you can quite quickly skip through to each page, and because it's Notion, you can embed just about everything. And if I wanted to, I could go to the next page and then the next page. You get the idea, essentially. And if you take a full screen screenshot of this is really effective to share on LinkedIn, for example. And what was cool was that this Notion zine idea actually turned into a real-life Notion zine. So about 2 years ago, the creation of the Notionette happened, which was essentially a bunch of other female Notion ambassadors getting together saying, hey, well, why don't we actually create a zine together? Let's all write an article and publish it. And so this is the final result. So you've got a cool page, or it's Meet the Notionettes. We've each got a profile here, and you can flick through to each page. So this is a really cool idea. The next time you have to create a document to share, consider, hey, why don't we build it in Notion? The second case study that is increasingly happening every day is Notion as a way to create passive income. So Notion templates can essentially be digital products that are sold behind a paywall. The most common marketplaces are Gumroad and Lemon Squeezy, but Etsy is also working just fine if you put the link on a PDF and then upload the PDF. It all does that. But people are making a lot of money from Notion templates at the moment, for those who aren't aware. And again, Notion templates are perfect because let's say you are a creator who has a framework and you want to package up that framework and even make it interactive and turn it into somewhat of a mini app. You can do that with Notion, whereas you can't do that with a PDF or a Canva workbook. And this is also a lot more scalable for the creator. Let's say you're an expert and you have a personal brand. Instead of you trading your time for money each time, you can package up your framework in a Notion template and sell that many, many times over and raise your prices, essentially. So this is a technique that I'm seeing a lot for people who are building their personal brands. So authors, influencers, different experts. Right now I'm working with an author to Notion templatize all of her frameworks, which is really exciting. And I recently worked with an influencer on YouTube to turn her framework into a Notion template that we can see on screen here. So this is increasingly becoming a thing that you will start to see a lot more of. So that's using Notion templates to generate passive income, but then Notion templates are also becoming a way to create lead and retention magnets. So let's say you are a brand and you've packaged up your framework or your branding and ideology and overall vibe into a Notion template. You've given that to your customer for free as just a bonus thing, but they're using that template every day, they're engaging with it. Then all of a sudden your brand becomes a lot more memorable in their brain. They might even want to share that template on social media, like, hey, look at what I'm using. Someone else downloads the template, they're another member of your brand, and you create this feedback loop here. So this is really useful for events. Digital goodie bags are becoming a lot more of a thing. I am currently working with a well-known course provider to produce their Notion template for their digital goodie bag at this moment in time. That's happening in a couple of weeks. D2C brands, you can imagine an unboxing moment. You open up the lid, there's a QR code. Whoa, there's a Notion template here for me to use, how cool. Or even newsletters. This is something that I also see a lot of nowadays, where sign up to my newsletter to get my top 5 tips on how to grow your audience or something like that. But they've packaged that up in a Notion template. So all of these things are helping brands grow in a really cool and innovative way. So some examples of what I spoke about. You've got the digital goodie bag here. So you might go to an event and you receive a page like this, where if you open this up, you would see the recordings from that day, speaker bio, as well as further resources. Notion always has great digital goodie bags for their events, I will say. But then I spoke also about how brands could create a really cool unboxing moment. So I created a concept habit tracker for Athletic Greens, where you can incorporate the brand values and branding within the template. But at the end of the day, this is a habit tracker template. This is something that the end user is using every day, and to increase the likelihood of them purchasing again, you could even include an exclusive discount within the template if they choose to use it. So you can create all of these really cool feedback loops. And even let's go with the Salomon Trail Guide. Yes, this is another concept build that I built, where Salomon have a blog and they've listed all of their favorite trails in Brussels. There's no reason why they couldn't templatize that in Notion and turn this into a tracker instead of just having it as a static blog on their website. Now, at this point, the end user can actually interact with the information in a meaningful way. So these are the main trends that I see happening within the Notion community, and who knows, maybe this time next year I'll be coming up with 3 more, because I'm struggling to keep up with all the changes that are happening. But I do my best, and I do have a newsletter that I publish weekly-ish with all my latest finds, so feel free to follow along using the QR code, or just find me on social media afterwards. And also find me if you are interested in one of these Big Notion Energy stickers, which are exclusive to this event and the Big Notion Energy events that I run targeted at specific industries. Yeah.
It's been so great listening because we're hearing some of this information ourselves, being massive Notion users, massive Notion fans, and just some of the things you guys are saying, I just nod along, going, yeah, that's why we do it. So we're an MSP, so we have huge amounts of information and a huge, blocking point for us, and something that's something that's really helped unlock our growth recently is the ability to organize all of our information and to surface all of our information. So Notion has been, completely life-changing for us. So it's nice to be kind of in a room of some other nerdy people who kind of get it. So that's really cool. So we've been talking a lot about kind of creative businesses this afternoon, but also we want to talk quickly about not creative businesses, but solving business problems creatively. So I just want to invite up onto the stage a colleague who I think everyone would agree has big Notion energy, Lucas. Yeah, take it. You can be the first to sit on my Q&A panel. So a quick introduction to us. So Lucas and I are part of the information security team at LeftBrain. And we have slightly different backgrounds ourselves. So I actually started out many years ago as a writer and director for theatre. I used to run a theatre company, and somehow I ended up in technology, information security, and to where I am now. And Lucas, what was your job before LeftBrain?
Yeah, I'm in a similar standpoint. I used to be a music teacher, so creative arts is where I started out, and then kind of made the switch into IT just this year, basically, in January.
Yeah, so we're people that we've got a gargantuan task to do at LeftBrain, and that's kind of organising the security of a massive client base. And so what Notion has done for us really is allowed us to be creative in the way that we use that information and the way that we organise things. So Lucas, when Lucas joined, only maybe 4 or 5 months ago, he'd never ever used Notion, and I gave him a massive task. What was that task, Lucas?
So the task was to try to create a centralized management system for all of our clients' technologies. You can imagine that this is, especially as an MSP, this is like a huge task because you're not just dealing with one productivity suite, you're dealing with all of them. Any kind of bespoke configurations of technologies that clients come to us with, we have to then be able to manage for them. So we essentially needed to make a way that we could keep track of all of the cybersecurity controls for all of the technologies that we manage for clients. And so I was able to basically build that from the ground up that met our specific needs in Notion.
Cool. And so if you didn't have Notion, how do you think you could do that? Yeah,
so the alternatives are lots of other big kind of software solutions. Like they're these huge, really bloated ones that end up doing, way more than you ever need. They've got all these features, but they're not specific to what you need it to be able to do. And so you're paying a lot of money, but not necessarily being able to always get all of the use out of the one that you're buying. And so, or traditionally, you do it like we used to do it, which was very ad hoc. You're making the things that you need to keep track of in the moment and then, forgetting about it because it's stored on some Excel sheet that's not shared with you correctly and it's somewhere else entirely, right? Like it was so hard to keep that information accessible to everyone. And so, yeah, having Notion allows you to keep it all in one spot and everybody knows where to go when you need to access that. And it's specific to our business because we built it.
Yeah, great. So you never touched Notion until you built, Lucas is now amongst the top with our Notion gurus. We've got our certified consultants over here as well, but also Lucas has very quickly risen up there. How did you find coming to it from a complete beginner, never having seen the platform before?
So it was funny because I got into it and every single person that I was like, oh, have you used Notion before? I was like, no. And they're like, oh, it's great. Like, you'll love it. Don't worry. It started out really just building like basic pages, like we heard earlier. It was a lot of like note taking and stuff. We were just trying to write reports, and I was used to doing it in like Microsoft Word and things like that. But it was just so easy. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is just like it takes away like all of the issues with formatting, not having to mess around with font sizes and just have some like I don't care if it's like font size 20 or 40. I just want to have a heading and then my text. And Notion does all that kind of heavy lifting for me. Moving on from there, it was asking my colleagues for help who had used it because, again, as we've talked about, the community around Notion, there's tons of resources, whether they're made by people who are using the product or by Notion themselves. They've got lots of really helpful videos and tutorials and things like that. But it's just getting stuck in and being able to use the product as much as I can. Now that I've used it a ton, I see how like powerful it is and how much it can do. My favorite thing is like related databases and formulas and roll-up properties. Like it can do so much. And if you can think about it and if you can logically say like, okay, how would this work together? You can make it in Notion. And it's taken a while to learn the syntax of some of the formulas and stuff like that. But once you learn it, it's super easy to just slap something together. If someone comes to me with a problem, I'm like, yeah, I can fix it in Notion.
Yeah, cool. So, I mean, Lucas done some absolutely crazy Figma diagrams of all our databases that kind of now organize our company, and it's quite extensive.
I think 33 databases that are all interconnectedly related to one another.
Relational databases, this man. So, I mean, for me as well, from being able to task someone like Lucas to come in and build these amazing systems, what that's allowed us to do as a business is really been quite massive. So one of the first things we did was organize all of our information security policies and database and everything, and that got us through the ISO 27001 certification, which is sounds quite boring, but it's basically a really awesome security qualification. Also, we didn't just stop there. We actually built a way to scale, applying that security standard to our clients. So clients come to us and they say, help, we need help getting this. And we say, right, first thing you need to do is get Notion. And then we've got this awesome template, and we'll show you how to use it, and we'll add in the bits, and we'll do the human part towards creating your management system. After that, we went on to build that big database that Lucas was working on, where we track all our clients' technology. And that actually allowed us to get another really boring certification. You ready? ISO 9001, which is a quality management system, which we got just last week, by the way. So let's have a round of applause for that. So at the end of the day, the business, the return on investment for myself as a director of business is been that we've been able to create new services, and we've been able to improve the quality of the services that we do deliver. So, and we can't really ask for much more than that. So I'd like to invite up now David from Notion and Francis as well, just to see if anyone's got any questions. We're all Notion nerds up the front who can answer your questions.
Scooch over.
Thank you very much.
Quickly, David, because we haven't heard from you, do you want to quickly introduce yourself and our partnership?
Absolutely, yeah. So thank you so much for having us. It's been an absolute pleasure to listen. I mean, I listen to Ciarán all the time, but so that wasn't a pleasure. No, I'm just joking. It was great. No, but to hear from all of you and from Francis about the community and what she does. So my role is I'm a channel partner lead for EMEA. This is a brand new motion that we are starting, which means we are trying to find solutions partners that can both resell Notion to customers, but also offer services. And LeftBrain is one of 4 currently in EMEA that we're doing in a pilot that I'm leading. So this is a very new thing that we're doing, and it's kind of like augmenting our sales team and our professional services and our CSM and solution engineering team with partners like yourselves. And that's kind of what I do.
Thank you. So does anyone have any questions for this diverse Notion nerd panel? Ben?
Francis, you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, big Notion energy. You mentioned how there's a certain type of organisations that are usually associated, like a stereotype almost. And it sounds like a positive stereotype. Yeah. But it also sounds like some organisations are going to think, well, Notion isn't we don't want to use it. What do you think the main, perhaps, misunderstandings about it are that stop some companies thinking they should go for it? Because with businesses, they're often thinking of cost centers, and it's like, why do we need another app? We already use Microsoft, or we already use Jira, or something like this. What do you think the negative kind of connotations to Notion might be, if any? I mean, it's...
Yeah, I think you've sort of nailed it. I don't think so. I think you sort of nailed it on the head there, where people think like, oh, it's just another app. But I actually had a conversation with someone today about this. What a lot of the time people don't realize is that Notion can replace a lot of their other apps, and then the barrier to entry becomes, well, I don't think we have the brain space to figure this out right now, which is fine. A lot of the times clients will have the initial conversation, and they might come back to me in 6 months and be like, okay, we are ready to kind of reverse engineer our processes and figure out what our perfect workflow and system would be, because it does take a lot of brain space. It does, but it's incredibly rewarding. A lot of companies have not actually sat down and said, this is what we do. These are all of our rituals, all of our processes, all of the things we need to do to be successful, because they haven't created the time to do it. But I've learned in this business that you need to create time, because once you do get the whole system set up, you are saving literally hours, but you just got to be in the right mindset to get there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so I remember when Lucas first started, I said to him, no time is wasted sat staring at Notion and trying to figure something out. So if you want, just spend days just, thinking of how to do it in the best possible way, because it won't be time wasted. It's going to be time saved later down the line.
I remember that, and the amount of, scrapped ideas that I had with that initial, but that's how it worked, right? Like I started with an idea of like, how can I do this? And then someone would come to me and say, oh, you could do this bit better. And then I was like, what's a roll-up? And then, if you are any little bit familiar with Notion, then roll-ups are like a huge part of what they're able to do, right? And so, just progressively learning, and then you can build on it, right? It's not even a static thing. Once you make a system that works well, you come across in a couple months' time, like a new use case or something else that you want to record in that database. It's super easy. You just add it immediately, and then it just works, right? Like it's not something that you have to spend tons of time recreating. Once you've caught something that works, you can really quickly edit what you have to continue to serve your needs. Yeah.
Any other questions? Sir?
Yeah, question on the Notion product roadmap. We're all kind of buzzing with energy about this Notion Forms and the ability to rearrange pages. Is that kind of a hint towards Notion developing into more of an app builder platform that could completely replace no-code tools, or is that something that we're not really prepared to say at this point?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'll pass it on to my...
So fortunately, I had a client call cancelled, so I'm able to respond to this one and save you, Dak. I actually think that's where we've come from. So if you look at our goal as a company, we have this view of there are something close to 400 million knowledge workers in the world and 5 million software developers. So we have people who require 400 million people who require software every day to get their job done, and a very small amount of people who can actually build the tools in order to do their work. And what we want to do is be able to make that tool making ubiquitous. So giving those 400 million people the tools, which sounds like absolutely enormous amount of people. It's scary to say it out loud, but to give those people the tools that they need in order to get their job done. But it's not a new thing. That's where we've always been coming from. I just think it's an evolving process, and we have a very strong foundation in order for us to continue to build and give people more and more frameworks and easier methodologies to build those tools to get their work done. So yes.
I just want to add something to that. I think it's also I think this also tells us about the story that we've seen here today. We have people like Francis who build things for other people who don't maybe have the time or energy to do that. We have solution partners like LeftBrain who work with large customers, smaller customers that wants to get things done but don't know how to do it or can't find the time. So I think between those developers and between those knowledge workers, there's a layer of the community, there's a layer of partners that are able to support that as well. Now Notion, if you want to, and some of us want to dig into the blocks and roll-ups and databases and formulas and all that kind of stuff, some people just need to get home to their 2-year-old and just get them to bed, right? So I think that's the good thing with Notion, that we offer up this huge potential for the likes of LeftBrain or Francis or other consultant partners or influencers to do what they do best for that particular audience. So I just want to have that said as well.
Any other questions?
I have a final question. David, what do you see as the future of this kind of Notion partnership pilot scheme? Where do you see it headed?
That's a big, hairy question, right? So we're in the pilot phase right now, but I think Notion has always been a very lean and smart company when it comes to expenditure and hiring the best people, etc. I'm like looking at Ciarán, not myself. With that as well, to be able to reach this ubiquity that we're talking about, making software tooling ubiquitous, becoming a huge bloated organization is probably not the best idea. And to be able to do that, that's why the community has been so successful, because we rely on people like Francis who have that big Notion energy to bring that out to the world. But we also need to bridge that gap also to other companies that have other requirements, right? And certain companies need people that are on the ground, keyboard on, can do things. And I think this pilot is just the starting point. Hopefully we can bridge this to the rest of EMEA. We already have partners in Japan, and we're finding partners in South Korea. We're looking at service partners across the world. So there's a growing need from our customer base as well for these type of services. So I just think the future is looking very bright, and I think this energy that we have in the room here today, I feel that if I go to Berlin, if I go to Paris, if I go to anywhere in the world, I will meet community members or partners as well. So the future is bright. Just have to get to work.